The summer of 1906 in New York City was sweltering, the air thick with the promise of scandal. Evelyn Nesbit, a vision of beauty, with her cascading auburn hair and delicate features, stood at the center of a storm that would soon erupt into one of the most sensational trials of the century. At just 21, she was already a celebrity, a chorus girl turned model whose face adorned magazine covers and inspired artists. But beneath her radiant exterior lay a life tangled in ambition, manipulation, and tragedy. Evelyn's story began in Pittsburgh, where she was born into modest circumstances in 1884. Her father's death left the family destitute, forcing Evelyn and her mother to scrape by. By 16, her striking beauty caught the eye of photographers and artists in New York, where she moved with her mother in pursuit of a better life. She became a sought-after model, her image immortalized in paintings and advertisements. It was in this glittering world that she met Stanford White, the renowned architect whose design shaped Manhattan's skyline. White, a man of 47 with a commanding presence and a penchant for excess, was a titan of New York society. His architectural masterpieces, like the Washington Square Arch, were matched only by his reputation for lavish parties and predatory charm. In 1901, when Evelyn was just 16, White took an interest in her. He invited her to his opulent apartment in the Madison Square Tower, a place filled with velvet drapes, gilded mirrors, and a red velvet swing, a peculiar toy that would later become infamous. Evelyn, naive and dazzled by his wealth, was drawn into his orbit. Their relationship was complex, a mix of patronage and exploitation. White showered Evelyn with gifts and opportunities, arranging for her to perform in Broadway shows like Florodora. But his affection came at a cost. One night, after plying her with champagne, White assaulted her, leaving Evelyn shattered and forever changed. She confided in no one, carrying the shame in silence as she continued to navigate the world of theater and modeling. Enter Harry Kendall Thaw, a wealthy but unstable heir to a Pittsburgh railroad fortune. Thaw, with his boyish looks and erratic behavior, became obsessed with Evelyn after seeing her perform. By 1903, he was relentlessly pursuing her, showering her with attention and proposals. Evelyn, wary of his volatility but desperate for stability, married him in 1905. Thaw's wealth offered security, but his jealousy and paranoia soon poisoned their marriage. He fixated on Stanford White, whom he believed had ruined Evelyn. Thaw's hatred grew into an obsession, fueled by Evelyn's reluctant confession of White's assault. On June 25, 1906, the simmering tension exploded. Evelyn and Thaw attended a performance at the rooftop theater of Madison Square Garden, a building ironically designed by White. The show, Mademoiselle Champagne, was a light-hearted revue, but the atmosphere was anything but festive for Evelyn. She sensed Thaw's agitation as he fidgeted beside her, his eyes darting toward the crowd. Unbeknownst to her, White was also in attendance, seated at a table near the stage. As the performance ended and the audience mingled, Thaw's rage reached its breaking point. He approached White, who was laughing with friends, oblivious of the danger. Without warning, Thaw pulled a revolver from his coat and fired 3 shots into White's head and chest. The architect collapsed, dead before he hit the floor. Screams erupted as patrons fled, and Evelyn, frozen in horror, watched her husband stand over the body, his face a mask of triumph. Thaw was arrested on the spot, and the murder became an instant sensation. Newspapers dubbed it the crime of the century, splashing Evelyn's image across front pages. She was portrayed as both victim and femme fatale, a siren who had driven 2 men to ruin. The public devoured every detail: the red velvet swing, White's debauchery, Thaw's madness. Evelyn's past was laid bare, her beauty a double-edged sword that captivated and condemned her. The trial, which began in January 1907, was a circus. Thaw's defense team, backed by his family's fortune, painted him as a protector avenging his wife's honor. They argued that Thaw suffered from dementia americana, a supposed condition that drove men to violence when their women were wronged. Evelyn, coerced by Thaw's mother, testified on his behalf, recounting White's assault in agonizing detail. Her testimony was a spectacle, her composure under cross-examination both heartbreaking and mesmerizing. She described the night White betrayed her trust, her voice trembling but resolute. The courtroom hung on her every word. The prosecution, meanwhile, portrayed Thaw as a calculating madman and Evelyn as a manipulative opportunist. They dug into her relationships, questioning her morality and motives. The jury, however, was swayed by the narrative of a defiled maiden and a chivalrous, if unhinged, husband. After a hung jury in the first trial, a second trial in 1908 resulted in Thaw's conviction. Not a murder, but of manslaughter due to insanity. He was sent to an asylum, where he lived comfortably, supported by his wealth. Evelyn's life after the trial was a slow unraveling. Thaw's family, who had promised to support her, turned their backs once the verdict was secured. She returned to the stage, but her reputation was tainted. Audiences came to gawk, not to admire. She starred in vaudeville acts and silent films, but the roles were demeaning, capitalizing on her notoriety. Her marriage to Thaw ended in divorce in 1915, and she struggled with poverty and addiction in the years that followed. The murder of Stanford White marked a turning point in American culture, exposing the underbelly of Gilded Age excess. It was a story of power and privilege, of men who wielded both to devastating ends. Evelyn, caught between White's predation and Thaw's obsession, became a symbol of the era's contradictions, a woman celebrated for her beauty, yet punished for it. Her story resonated with a public grappling with changing notions of gender, morality, and justice. In her later years, Evelyn retreated from the spotlight. She wrote memoirs, attempting to reclaim her narrative, but the world had moved on. She died in 1967 at 82 in a nursing home in California, far from the glittering stages of her youth. Her life, once a blaze of fame and infamy, ended quietly, a footnote in a century that had both idolized and discarded her. The red velvet swing, that strange relic of White's decadence, remained a potent symbol. It encapsulated the allure and danger of Evelyn's world, a place where beauty was currency and love could turn lethal. The murder of Stanford White was more than a crime. It was a mirror held up to a society enthralled by its own excesses. Evelyn Nesbit, the girl on the swing, paid the price for its reflection.